Hello there, everyone, and welcome to another exciting installment of Pobble Live. Now that we've gone live, I can see that we've got 6 viewers at the moment. We'll wait for those numbers to build a little bit for people to join. Please remember not to put your first name into the chat. If you are in the chat, just say hello. And if you are chosen for a Pobble prize, you'll be done so based on the YouTube name itself. Welcome to those that are here. I've seen some comments in the comment section already. That is lovely. Today we'll be looking at, hi, good to see you. We will be looking at our first actual piece of Pobble. Last week was a little bit different because it was the introduction session where we looked at language acquisition. So we started gathering words. Today, we will still be doing some language acquisition because it will help you if we build that language and build those word banks. We'll also be looking at a feature that I would like you to try and use in your Pobble if you want to win a Pobble prize. Now, on Pobble prizes, good evening, good to see you, welcome. On the area of Pobble prizes, what we've decided to do is we've decided to give out, and I've spoken to Mrs. Meredith about this, we've decided to give out our Pobble prizes in our celebration assembly. And the reason we are going to do the draw and give out the prizes in our celebration assembly is because we're starting to get physical work. So that means some of you, I'm not going to mention who at the moment, some of you have bought me some Pobble work based on last week's Pobble Live, and it is really, really good work. So what we're going to do, we are going to announce 2 Pobble prize winners in the assembly this Friday. The first Pobble prize winner will be random, and we'll do this each week. So anybody that puts a comment, you don't put your name, but anybody who puts a comment into the live chat section will be entered into the Pobble prize. So if you're here live, joining us live, and you put a comment into the chat, hi, sorry I'm late. That's absolutely fine. We're just saying let's not put our first names into the chat. We're going to take the YouTube names instead. So don't pop your name down there yet. I know you're here. I know who you are. But we're going to keep the names out of the chat for now, and they will be removed. No, that's fine. You don't need to apologize. They will be removed so that they're not there. But we will do the Pobble prize draw in Friday's assembly. So if you've brought me a piece of Pobble work, and I know some of you have, and I know that some of you in the chat have brought me a piece of Pobble homework based on what we've talked about, you have a chance in the assembly of winning that Pobble prize because of good work. So we're rewarding 2 things now. We're rewarding 1, good work, and we're also still doing our random prize for the people that are here live. So if you are live, just pop a comment into the chat and you will have a chance of winning that prize this Friday in assembly so that we can all celebrate together. Welcome to Pobble Live. We have our regular Pobble star, the Pobble star that's going to start us off. And one thing that's been really good, the last video that went up has had over 100 views. That means that people are even if they're not live, they're coming, they're watching, and they're joining in. I've had work come back, which is also really, really good, as I have mentioned. But also, all the subscribers that suddenly disappeared have come back, and we've got 128 subscribers on our YouTube channel now, which is wonderful. If you are here for the first time, please press the bell icon. That will let you know when Pobble goes live. If you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe, and let's get those subscription numbers up. The higher we get in terms of subscribers, the more things we can do, like having 2 cameras and that kind of thing, and we can maybe do some special episodes. And if you haven't liked already, please like. So let's see what the comments are saying. Hi, I'm live. I'm live. Hi, and good evening, sir. Good evening to you. Wonderful. Thank you for the likes. And we're going to get going with today's Pobble Live. So we're going to have a look at our Pobble now. This is the Pobble that will have, we're live from year 2 and year 3, 2 entries. Hey, fantastic. Well, 2 for 1, we might have to put your name in twice then, won't we? To year 2 and year 3. And don't forget, if you bring me a good piece of work, that's an extra chance at winning a prize, even if you're not live. So if you're watching this after it has been live, you could still win a prize if you bring me a good piece of work. I have not got that Pobble. No, you haven't got that Pobble yet because we haven't handed it out or put it in our Pobble books. But this is going to be the Pobble that we do this week. And you can bring it back at any time before the next Pobble Live to do it. So let's have a look at what our Pobble Live is based around. Here we go. We can see in the picture we have a little girl and she is riding an elephant. Let's have a look at our story starter. You might not be able to see it from there, but don't worry, I'm going to read it to you. So here we go. Story starter. Charge, she yelled, feeling mighty atop the elephant. She jolted with every step they took, the elephant's feet punching into the baking hot sand, sending up large clouds into the humid air so that he could taste the grains of sand in his parched mouth. The pair stomped across the desert sand, focused rather, on reaching their goal. Wonderful. A really interesting story and some good language. Let's see, what do I like in there? I like the dialogue bits. We've got charge that's in the speech marks with an exclamation mark. I like that. What else do I like? I like the yelled parts are not shouted, not bellowed, not called, not screeched, not screamed, but yelled. I like that word. That's a really, really good word. Hi. Thank you for joining. Lovely to have you here, and I'm glad you're here. I know that you usually give me really, really good answers, so I cannot wait for those answers. Let's keep going. She jolted with every step. She wasn't shook. She wasn't shaken. She wasn't catapulted or thrown. She was jolted. Great word with every step they took. The elephant's feet, not stepping, not being placed down, but punching, because they're so hard and heavy, aren't they? Those elephant's feet are punching at the ground into the baking hot sand. Not just hot, the baking hot sand makes me think of baking. I do love baking, by the way. That's one of my favorite things. My wife, Mrs. Keeling, she allows me to do the cooking, which I love. And I occasionally love to bake too. Probably not as much as Mrs. Keeling would like, because she does like my baking, but I do like to bake. What about you? Anybody in the chats like to bake? And if you do like to bake, what do you like to bake? Good way of getting some writing done or some reading is to choose a recipe and to follow that recipe and to bake something. Or if you have a really super amazing recipe, to write that recipe down and to share it with your friends so that I like baking cupcakes. Wonderful. Me, cake. I do a really good chocolate cake. I can't remember if I've made it for Mrs. Keeling. I think I did a long time ago. I haven't made it in a very long time. I bake Oreos, absolutely. Oreo marshmallow dessert. I'm baking lemon cake. I bake shortbread. And that is wonderful. Cheesecake. Oh, I love cheesecake. I love kind of sweet, but also kind of bitter flavors. So when you put the two together in a cake, I really enjoy that. Lovely. Some great keen bakers there. That's wonderful. Why not write your own recipe? You know, you've got room in the Pobble book. It doesn't always have to be about this. If you want to do a recipe and bring that to me, that might be a nice little aside. But back to the picture at hand. The baking hot sand sending up large clouds into the humid air. Humid meaning it's quite damp, that air, and it sticks to you, so it's warm and wet. So that he could taste the grains of sand in his parched mouth. He's not thirsty, he's parched. These are all up-leveled words, really good up-level words. The pair stomped across the desert sand. Again, instead of punching this time with his feet, he's stomping. So that's another good verb. Because this is the thing. People think that when we up-level words, we're just talking about adjectives. We're not. Adjectives aren't the only thing that can be up-leveled. You can up-level nouns. You can choose and change a noun. You can choose and change a verb. Verbs are really great for up-leveling. So instead of jumping, you might catapult, or you might bounce, or you might spring. Verbs are very good for changing too. And that's what they've done here. And they focused on reaching their goal. Okay, let's get into language acquisition, because that's really going to help us if we decide to to finish this story. You don't have to do that. I've got some other suggestions for you at the end of this PowerPoint, and we can have a little talk about that. Here we go then. We're going to do a roundup. We're going to gather some language, and we're going to focus first on the setting. Now, the setting, as it says in the story starter, is a desert setting. And there's going to be two very different types of desert that we look at, but still deserts by definition. Still deserts by definition. Let's have a little look. So here we go. We've got your kind of traditional desert. I'm sure that when I said desert, this is the kind of desert that you think about, yeah? The sand, the bright sun, the heat, and the miles and miles of endless, vast emptiness, okay? This is what I want to start gathering language for to begin with. And this is where I'm going to turn to you, first of all. I've broken it down into 4 categories, because when we gather language, it's good not to just say all the words that come into our heads, but to group them and to put them into word families and to put them into different areas. So we're going to start with weather. And we're going to think of all the words we can for the weather. And then we're going to use the words that we come up with for the weather, and we're going to use them to generate other words. So, thinking about a desert, I'm going to give you a few simple words to start off with. I'm going to give you the word hot. I'm going to give you the word dry. I'm going to give you the word sunny. Very, very simple words. Can we expand on that in the chat? What have we got? I like it. We've got scorching. So that's a word related to the hot, maybe to the dry as well. Scorching. And you know what? Scorching, and this will happen to you when you hear a word, it will make you think of another word. Scorching to me makes me think of burning, yeah? The burning hot sand. Oh, it's not just hot anymore, it's burning hot. It's absolutely burning. What else have we got? Oh yeah, we had burning, that came in as well. Well done. Scorching, hot. How else might that weather be in the desert? Well, dry, I could take that word that we had before, which was parched. I could call the land thirsty. What else could I have? Well, there was baking, wasn't there? That baking word that we took from before, the baking sand. Is there anything else? Hazy, I like that. Yeah, because of the sand, it might be quite hazy through the sand. And actually, that might be part of the weather. There might be a sandstorm. Sandstorm, lovely. What else do we have? Barren, yeah. Let's keep barren for landscape for now. Let's keep barren for landscape, but save that in mind. That's a very, very good word. Yeah, and if it's kind of hard to see, you might say that, I wouldn't say it was foggy in the desert, because that implies that kind of moisture or water, but you might become foggy-eyed, so you can't quite see through the thick. Thick might be a word for the sand. Thick, what other words could we have that are near that? So the wind, whistling, torrid, searing. Oh, I love that one. Searing. Searing hot. Yeah, absolutely searing. Roasting. What a word. Roasting. Yeah. Roasting. That's a good one. Roasting. Wow, look at all this that we're building now. We're taking ideas. And these are mainly just synonyms for hot, aren't we? Sun-baked. Blustery. If we want that breeze, it could be blustery. Certainly in a sandstorm, it would be blustery, and you might get buffeted, and you might get blasted, and you might get hit around, and you might by the sand, and it might strike you. So you might have words like that, like struck or strike or hit or punched at, like the elephant's feet, but the sand punching at your face as you're striving to get through, and the heat is radiating like a radiator. That heat is radiating off of the ground, and it is scorching, and it is burning, and you are foggy-eyed, and you are thirsty, caught within the sandstorm of this parched land, and things are becoming hazy, and the sand is thick, and you are crawling and falling, and you are finding it hard because of that raging, unstoppable, I like those words, unstoppable, bleak, raging, boiling heat. Absolutely. And you can start, yes, the choking heat, the heat that's so close, so hot. And all of these words work, don't they? And they go together, and they build those ideas. And that is why we start gathering the language. And that is just weather. Well done. Some absolute sweltering. Love it. Frosty. Hold on to that. It might come up later. Frosty. That's funny. Okay. That's weather. If you like that language and you want to use it, pause the video or go back to before I rubbed it off, and you can use that within your story. Lots of good language there for the weather in the desert. All just from heat and sun. And I started with some very, very simple words there, didn't I? But they inspire other words. So now let's go for landscape. This is what the land looks like, yeah? So the view of this landscape. And I'm going to take that word, barren, because barren means kind of empty and dead, yeah? Nothing really alive there. Now, we know that there are living things in the desert. There are creatures and creepy crawlies and poisonous things and dangerous things and cold-blooded animals. But it does look barren. It does look dead. It does look empty. And I'm going to put the word empty up there as well. Something about it not moving, maybe. Still. I like that. Let's have still. And then let's have a look at what we're getting. Yes, I think we could use sun-soaked. We could use sun-soaked because that's what it looks like. It looks like it's being drenched. Drenched is another word, isn't it? And it's kind of an opposite word, which is nice because if you use the word drenched, it's the opposite of being dry. So it's drenched with sun, and ironically, it's very dry. But I do like sun-soaked. Again, that's like a water word, isn't it? Oven-like. Yeah, that would go with the weather. Maybe less the landscape, but what a metaphor. Yeah, like an oven. No, sorry, simile, if you're saying it's like. If you said it was an oven, that would be a metaphor. Tropical, absolutely. Picturesque, it's pretty, isn't it? It's pretty. People do go to the desert for the view. And we'll have talk about that when we look at the next picture. It's not just this kind of dry, empty place where, adventure stories happen and people have a scramble for their life. Some people just visit the desert, If you go to Morocco, for example, if you go to Marrakesh, you can go out into the desert on a trip, You could go out for a few hours and see what's going on out there. That's absolutely fine. A dry environment. I like that word, environment. We might like that. Oh, golden rays and aura. I like that. Let's get that down. Golden rays. The golden rays and a beautiful aura around the land. Sorry. And a beautiful aura around that land. So we could have beautiful rays, or we could have aura. We could have environment. I'm going to put that word down because you can refer to the environment, can't you? It's a good word to have. Let's have it. What else have we got? Desolate, absolutely. So that's another word for just being completely empty. Very good words over there. Desolate. Infertile, yeah. So it's not really got much life. Nothing can grow. The land isn't fertile. Nothing can grow. Yes, parched again. Yes, so you could describe the land as parched, and with that you got words like cracked, because the floor could be cracked, couldn't it? With it being so dry, cracked and broken. And almost giving it kind of a human side, you could call it scarred. The land is scarred or torn. Torn is another one that it could be. Spiky and jagged and sharp. Absolutely, those could all describe it. Steeped sand, yeah. Hilly piles of sand, mounds of sand, dunes of sand. Absolutely. Filled with cactus, yeah. Cactuses, cacti. A wasteland, that's a great one. Scorched again, you could use the weather to describe the landscape too. Some really good words there that have come out. And if you want to use those, again, this is just one thing. We're talking about the site, the way that it looks. Pair that up with the weather, and you've got tons of language already. I like that one. Vast. I'm going to add that one on before we finish. If you want, pause the video now. You can use this language when you're describing that landscape. All right. Now, sounds. This one's a bit harder, but there will be sounds in that desert. Even the absence of sound is a sound that we can describe. So I'm going to start there. I'm going to go for silence. I'm going to go for the sound of stillness. I'm going to go for nothingness. Yes, so we might have that wind. We might have the breeze, the soft breeze or the slight breeze. And what does it do? Well, it whispers, doesn't it? The wind whispers to carry on. An eerie silence. Yeah, so we could pair that up, couldn't we? And we could make the silence we could make the silence eerie. Absolutely. Think about sounds. Think about the creatures, because there will be creatures there. And there will be creatures in their little dens and in their little holes. And what might they make? So maybe like a scuttling sound, scuttling across the sand, or a scrambling sound, maybe. A scrambling, a scuttling, a rustling, maybe. A slight rustling. It's kind of uneasy. I describe these sounds as a little uneasy. Things going on that we're not quite happy about. Things that are a little uneasy. What about a snake? There are snakes in the desert. What might that be making? What sound might you listen out for and fear if you heard it? Yeah, so we could describe the wind as roaring if it was, or hissing. I like that. So if we were in that sandstorm, we would have the hissing wind. I do like that. We also could apply, and I'm sure this is what you meant, you could apply that hissing to the snake, couldn't you? It's almost a deserty sound, isn't it, when you hear it? That little, and what I was looking for was that, absolutely, you've just said it, rattling. If I was in a desert and I heard that sound, I would be on high alert at that point. That's quite scary, isn't it? So we could use this kind of, and we're building it, aren't we? You know, we're not talking about a haunted building. We're not talking about a spooky cave, but actually this is a bit scary, you know? It's this silence, this stillness, this emptiness, this nothingness. And then this uneasy feeling that's followed by this rustling or scuttling or scrambling, and then comes the rattling and the hissing, and then comes the panic, doesn't it? Yeah. And then comes the person who's in the desert who calls out. So calling out, the noise of the unknown. I like it. The noise of the unknown. Like that. Very nice. So again, we've got a list of sounds. We've got a list of landscape words. We've got a list of weather. And this is all from one image. Then we've also got the sounds that the creatures might make. So we can add into the sound the creatures, the chirping, the scuttling, the crying, the hissing, the spitting, the disturbing of the environment. And we can build all of this to create our picture of the desert. But there is more than one type of desert. For example, when we describe desert, we always go to this big, vast, empty, hot place. But it doesn't always look like this. In fact, sometimes the desert looks like this. And I'm just going to take you in a little bit closer so you can have another look at, so you can have a look at this picture. I'm going to take you in and you can have a bit of a closer look. This is the desert at night. And actually, the desert at night, surprisingly, can get very, very cold. You wouldn't think that one of the things you would have to think about is you might freeze in a desert. But at night, it does get very, very cold. And there's nothing to protect you from that wind, is there? Because there's nothing in the way of that wind. But also, the desert at night is absolutely stunning because the night sky in the desert, it doesn't have something called it's called light pollution. Because we live in a city or near a city, there's a lot of very bright lights down on the ground. And because there's a lot of very bright lights down on the ground, it causes this thing called light pollution. So that when you look up at the stars, you can't see them very clearly. But if you get out to the countryside, if you go out for a walk into the forests, or if you go out into the deserts of the world, you will suddenly see where there is no light pollution, that the sky is lit up by stars and planets and nebulas that you've never noticed before. So this is not one that I'm going to gather language on, but this is just one thing to reflect upon. If you're writing a story that's set in the desert, why not do part of it at night? Describe those twinkling stars, the freezing breeze where you had to huddle under a thick blanket as you shivered through the night. Yeah, absolutely. The smoke of the bonfire that was lit, watching it rise and dissipate into the air. And then bring in those eerie sounds that we talked about earlier, those soft rattles, the hissing of the snakes, the crawling of the creatures, because at night it's dark and you can't see it, and you can make it cold, you can make it spooky, but you could also make it beautiful. It's up to you. But there's a change, and maybe your story should have a change. So maybe it starts off in this hot desert baked land, and then, yes, absolutely, and then we can talk about the beauty, maybe seeing some form of electrical activity like the Northern Lights. Who of you actually saw the Northern Lights when they were over the UK? Did anybody go out and see them? It wasn't that long ago. They were visible, weren't they, over the UK? And you could get a few pictures with the Northern Lights in. We were quite lucky. We managed to see them, and they were very, very beautiful. But yeah, as you're writing, have a think about not just the daytime desert, but the nighttime. Change your setting. It will change. Little factoid then, let me read you a definition of a desert. A desert is a landscape where little precipitation occurs. That means precipitation means basically rain, little rain, not much rainfall. And consequently, living conditions create unique biomes and ecosystems. So interesting animals live there that can only live in these kind of harsher conditions. The lack of vegetation exposes the unprotected surface of the ground. About 1/3 of the land surface of the earth is arid or semi-arid. This includes much of the polar regions. So another thing that we don't think about is the North Pole and the South Pole. They are deserts. They're not hot deserts like the one that we just looked at, but they are polar deserts, cold deserts. So I wonder if we changed up now, because maybe you want to change your setting and you want it to be in a polar desert, and the characters are punching at the ground of the polar desert as they move through it. And then all of a sudden the weather changes, doesn't it? In a polar desert, we wouldn't have baked. We wouldn't have this heat. What would we have? I'm going to start us with simple words again. We're going to have cold, aren't we? We're going to have cold. We're going to be freezing, aren't we? We might still have that wind and a breeze. But now, because of these cold conditions, that breeze is going to be biting, isn't it? It's going to be painful. And from painful, we can get other pain words like agonizing. Agonizing or agonizingly, if we're turning it into an adverb, agonizingly cold. Let's talk about weather here then. Weather has changed. This is a desert too. Polar desert. What would that weather be like? Yeah, absolutely. Shivering cold, shivering. More than that, though, wouldn't it? What else can we have? Yeah, you could suffer from frostbite. Not a nice thing. Frostbite. But we could use it to describe as well our frostbitten fingers, our frostbitten cheeks. Yeah, bitter. It might be bitterly cold. Bitter out there. Bitterly cold. And again, if you want to add the ly, you can. Anything else that we've got? Yeah, discomfort. There'd be a lot of discomfort. You'd have to certainly wrap up and have layers, lots of layers, yeah, for warmth. Clinging, you could be clinging to the warmth, holding on to the warmth for dear life. What else could you have? Yeah, absolutely. It could be intolerable. I like that. Intolerable. You can't tolerate it anymore because it's so cold. Any other words for kind of cold or freezing or not very warm? And if you're there and on your computer or got something with you, maybe you get a thesaurus now, or maybe you get a thesaurus.com up on your computer and generate that language as well. Disdainful, yeah, disdainful, full of disdain. Or distasteful, maybe. Raw, absolutely. Absolutely. Hi. Crisp, yeah, the crisp snow. I like that. Crisp. Yeah. And then you can see from, just like we did on the hot desert, you could build, couldn't you? So not just that, you could talk about the cold, the weather. You could talk about how it looks. I mean, the obvious thing is kind of, again, it's barren, but it looks softer, doesn't it? Yeah, wintry. So we could talk about looks. We could also talk about the sounds we might hear. Here, I think it might be more kind of breezy. Yeah. And then we could also talk about the creatures. So the majestic polar bear. You could talk about the Arctic snow fox digging into burrows and jumping, because they jump, they leap, and they go down for the creatures, and burying itself in the snow. By switching up these settings, by changing the setting, you can change the language, and a good story will go to different settings. The reason a good story will go to different settings is because a good author knows that different settings equals different language, which equals more interesting stories. Okay. So we've talked about the setting, we've talked about the deserts. Really, the thing that we can add to that would be character. So one of the characters was this character here, the elephant that the main character was riding on, the elephant that was punching at the ground. And we can talk about this as a character. So we can talk about appearance, because when we do character description, we talk about appearance. We can talk about personality, because when we talk about character, we talk about personality, and the elephant could be cheeky, mischievous. It could be many things. We also might talk about actions. Yeah, and that was really where they were getting their description when they were talking about it in the story. But let's just have a think about those three categories. And can we gather any language about this elephant's appearance, personality, or actions? Well, straight away, I'm just going to get rid of the headings because I'm just going to gather the language and I want room for it. Straight away, I'm going to say brave, because this elephant is resilient and it is carrying on through that desert. So I could have resilience as well. I could have loyal, yeah, because it's a faithful, and I'm going to put that as well, faithful. A faithful friend of the one that it's carrying on its back. Bold, absolutely. So we're talking about personality, but maybe I want to kind of liven up my character a bit, and I want to make it a little bit cheeky. Yeah, stopping for cheeky drinks, and when he sprays the water, he sprays back onto the person on his back. So it might be a little cheeky. My elephant character. What else might it be? Charging across that desert. Brave, loyal, faithful, bold, cheeky. What do we think? Yeah, caring. So they're caring for the person that they're carrying. So caring might be a personality trait. What else? Short-tempered, maybe. Maybe they're getting a little bit tired of charging through. So maybe your elephant is a little short-tempered. Lovely. Anything else? Yeah, we're being specific here, but I'm thinking more just about personality at the moment. So maybe observant, yeah, noticing, yeah, things that they notice. So observant. And then appearance. What could we say? We could say, well, we could say large for a start, and then we can get so many words from that, like gigantic, towering, monstrous, but that's kind of negative connotations, but we could use monstrous, gigantic, towering, huge, humongous, gigantic. I've got gigantic, ginormous. I don't really like ginormous. I prefer enormous. Enormous. Yes, protective, we could add to those features up there. So protective, I like that one. The protective elephant, absolutely. Yeah, enormous. What else could we describe? We could describe the ears, couldn't we, as part of the appearance? So large, flappy, floppy ears. Defensive as well as a personality trait. Lovely. And then actions as well, we could also add in there. So we've got punching the ground because it was punching and moving fast. So darting if it's moving fast as well. Slamming, if we're hitting the ground, we could do slamming with their feet. What else could we have? Darting, punching, slamming, blazing, blaring, loud, absolutely. What else could we have? Charging, dashing. Yeah, let's get some of this. Charging, dashing. You know, if it's punching and slamming, it can be smacking the ground with its feet. Shaking the ground. Ambling along. Yeah, maybe after a while it starts ambling or roaring along. I like that too. Roaring, ambling. Lovely. Wonderful. Okay. We're going to pause there because we've done a lot of language acquisition and I want to give you some challenges. And this is what I would like you to do. I want to explain a couple of things and then I'll set you off so that you can try doing this Pobble at home. I'm just going to wipe this off just in case I need it again. I'm not sure I will, but I will wipe it off for now. So, first challenge today is I would like you to try and use adverbials. Now, adverbials can be fronted adverbials, and the only difference, really, the only thing that makes it a fronted adverbial is because you put it as a subordination, a subordinate clause at the start of your sentence. But actually, you can put adverbials in the middle or at the end of your sentence. They could be embedded with parentheses if you want year 6 work, or you can just add it onto the end of a sentence just to develop your sentence further. I want you to think about the 3 areas of adverbials that are on the board. One is position, one is time, one is manner. I've got some quick generations happening in the chat that I'm going to read to you. So I've got some time ones coming up. After, now, today, the day after, at midnight, before, later, finally. They're time adverbials, but you could also have adverbial phrases where it's a few words, you know. So later that day was one of them. At the stroke of midnight, as the clock struck 1. When could be a good one for time. When the elephant slowed down, comma. And I'm putting them at the front at the minute, but they don't need to. So let's have a look. Let's take one of them for time at the minute. So we've got when the elephant slowed down, the rider got off. You could start with the rider got off when the elephant slowed down. Yeah, it could come at the end. You can embed these things into the middle of sentences as well with parenthesis, but that again would be 5 or 6 skill, but you can do it lower down. Often, daily. There are other examples of time. Position words as well are really good ways to develop your sentence. So you could say behind, all around, surrounding, underneath, on top of. These are ways to start sentences. And then finally, we've got manner. So that would be your adverbs. If you do something quickly or silently or deadly or awkwardly or slowly or quick or fast. And we've got some more coming up. So we've got sadly, yes, you can do something sadly. You can do something silently. Silently, the hero dismounted the elephant. Awkwardly, he stumbled across the sand. He surveyed the land. When he saw something in the distance. Yeah, putting it at the ends, at the beginning, trying to thread it throughout. Luckily, he spotted an oasis and he rode the elephant with much haste towards it. Carefully, he ventured forth into the blazing desert. These are really good ways of taking all that language that we've built and framing it in a sentence. Yes, rapidly, the gigantic, cheeky elephant grasped the rider in its trunk and threw him into the water playfully at the end. Quick as a flash, you might want to change pace. Absolutely. Quick as a flash, they darted together through and over the hills. Without warning, they stumbled into the sand dunes and fell down. Pairing that language up with adverbials. This is a challenge I'm going to set you in your Pobble writing. And for those of you who bring me your Pobble writing and show me your Pobble writing, I'm going to choose a prize based on, can you use good position, time, or manner words in your sentence? And if you want some good examples, then please look at the chat, because one of our members in the chat has just gone absolutely all the way down the chat with words that you could use in your sentences to make sure that you're putting in those adverbials. So thank you very much for my helper that has done that. Thumbs up to you. By the way, if you're watching live and you haven't subscribed yet and you haven't pressed that bell icon, please make sure you do. For now, I would like to share with you some other ways that you could do your Pobble this week, all of which may get you that Pobble prize. Other ideas. So if you don't want to finish the story, if you think to yourself, you know what, never mind, I don't want to do that, I want to do something more creative, more interesting. Well, here is some ideas that you might want to take away and you might want to try. You might want to design your own journey across the desert, and you could draw your own maps. You could come up with your own purpose. You could select your own mode of transport. Yeah, it doesn't need to be an elephant. Think about how you might travel across that land. That's one way that you might do this. Or you might create a non-fiction text about deserts. You can still use all that language to describe it, but you could describe a desert based on research that you do. That would be a mixture of reading and writing. Perhaps you would like to, and this is an interesting one, I like this idea, I would probably do this. You might want to research deserts on other planets. There are deserts out there on other planets, and you might want to find facts about these deserts that exist on other worlds. Yeah. You might want to design your own vehicle. So I said you could talk about how you get across the desert, and we're getting lots of ideas again. Traveling by meerkat, by camel, by armadillo. They'd have to be pretty big ones unless your main character is a mouse that's riding on them. But some interesting ideas there. But maybe you want to design your own vehicle, maybe your own car, maybe your own desert buggy, maybe some interesting way of getting it across. And maybe you draw that vehicle, you describe that vehicle, and you label that vehicle. That's fine too. And then you could describe a journey in that vehicle across the desert. Maybe you want to do a report on the types of animals and plants that you might find in a desert. Please don't put your first names in the chat. They will be removed. We just take the chat name. That is all. But maybe you want to do a report on the types of animals and plants that you find in the desert. And if you want help, look in the chat, because we've just got a whole bunch of animals there that you might want to do a report about. Finally, and most importantly, whenever you're doing Pobble, have fun with it. If you're writing, then write for pleasure. We always talk about reading for pleasure, but write for pleasure. Write something that excites you. Like I say, I like scary things, so I like to write scary things. But I also like adventure stories. So when I write, I like to write adventure stories. That was more spooky, wasn't it? But you'll notice, and some of the children in my class will notice, that when I do kind of spooky language, that I get more excited about it, because that's what I like to read. That's what I like to write. A quick word bank. I don't know if all of this, some of this we've actually said already. I don't know if this is as good as your language that you've shared, but I'm going to share some other words that you might want to use in your work. Brave, alive, strong or powerful, majestic. I thought about that earlier to describe the elephant, but they are a majestic animal, so that might be one that you use. kind, willing. So the animal is willing to take him across the desert. He will do it for him. And that comes in with that faithfulness and loyalty that we talked about earlier. Able, unknown, towering. We did get that one. Fast and rumbling. I hope this has given you lots of language. I hope this has given you lots of ideas. I hope this has given you challenges that you can do at home. And more than anything else, I hope that you have enjoyed this week's Pobble Live. We will announce our winners on Friday in assembly. For now, have a wonderful time. And more than anything else, keep on pobbling.